I am so sorry about that, everyone. I got home from the hospital about 5:30 and mildly spaced. On that note, hi, I'm Christine. I am the president of Astronomy Club. Tonight, Dominic Horn will be giving a presentation on small space. Dominic, if you want to take it from here, that'd be great as I let people in.
All right, I'll start sharing my screen here in a second. All right, well, Christine, is that everyone?
They're probably going to be entering over the next couple minutes. So.
All right, well, we'll wait a couple more minutes and then we'll get started, just in case there are any stragglers. All right, so I think that's about everyone. So hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to this star party. Apologize for starting a bit late. There was a bit of miscommunication on who was in the Zoom. Today, my presentation is called Small Space America 2. This is the second presentation I have given on some of the smaller aerospace companies in the US. So that's why it's called Small Space America 2. All right. So when you hear aerospace or you think about space and the companies that go to space, you probably think SpaceX, Boeing, Blue Origin, maybe one or two others. However, that is not what we are going to be talking about today. Today, we are going to be talking about some of the smaller companies like RocketLab, SNC, and Firefly. Now, the idea behind this presentation is to get people interested in and more knowledgeable about the smaller companies that are everywhere nowadays. There are companies based in California, Georgia, Texas, New Mexico, and then that's just and then Alaska. So they're pretty much everywhere in the US. And then that's just the US, not even globally. So the first company we're going to talk about is the Sierra Nevada Corporation. While they have been around since the 1960s, and they've been involved in a lot of space projects throughout, whether that's building sensors for satellites or just kind of building some generalized equipment. Only recently have they really gotten into this aerospace game with their launch vehicles. And we'll go into a little more detail about that here in a minute. So SNC has locations all over the globe, including here in the US, where it's headquartered in Colorado, the UK, Germany, and even Turkey. The program we're going to be talking about was funded by NASA as part of its Commercial Crew Development Program. However, SNC did not win a contract to actually fly crew to the International Space Station. They only received a contract to do 6 resupply missions to the ISS. So this picture is of the crew version of their Dream Chaser space plane. It has been nicknamed America's Space Plane because as of right now, it is the only space plane in any sort of significant development. And it's going to be the first one to fly in space publicly since the space shuttle. There has been a space plane that the Air Force built, but that's like super secretive and we're not really supposed to know much about it. One of the great things about Dream Chaser is not only its reusability, but its ability to land on runways almost anywhere on Earth. I believe it can even land at like SeaTac International Airport if it suffers an emergency or if that's just where they decide they need to land. And the reason why being able to land on runways all over the Earth is so important is because sometimes when cargo is brought back from space, it is very time sensitive, whether it's like plants or lab rats. Sometimes the data is only viable for, say, 24 hours afterwards. And right now, the only way for stuff to come back from space is either on a Soyuz capsule or on a Cargo Dragon capsule from SpaceX. SpaceX lands their capsule in the middle of the ocean, and the Soyuz capsule lands in the middle of a Kazakhstani desert over in Asia. So it can be very difficult to acquire the data and research materials and get it back into a laboratory setting in a reasonable and productive amount of time. Dream Chaser will allow them to land it on a runway and get it into a lab within an hour or two of landing, which will be very good for them. Now, for the scientists. Now, if you look on the back of the space plane, you'll see a bit of a conical shaped object with a box on it and 2 solar panels coming out. This is the Sierra Nevada Corporation's Shooting Star cargo capsule. Now, this is a disposable capsule, and it is designed to burn up in the Earth's atmosphere to leave no waste. And the purpose of this capsule will be to bring up most likely water and food and other supplies that aren't going to have to be brought back down to the surface and safe. And it'll also be used as a trash disposal method. So when the ISS has trash, they can shove it all into Shooting Star and they'll send it into the atmosphere and it'll burn up on re-entry. And if you're lucky enough to see it from the ground, it'll look like a shooting star. Now, that image on the left-hand side is a picture of, not a picture, but rather a rendering of Dream Chaser inside of a Vulcan Centaur rocket produced by ULA. 5 of Dream Chaser's 6 resupply missions will be launched using the new Vulcan rocket. The The sixth mission will be launched from Europe on a European rocket. They haven't really decided which rocket yet, so that's to be determined. The next company we're going to talk about is Astra. Now, this company is based in Alameda, California. It was originally based in Delaware, but it has since moved. Now, one thing to note about Astra is that it's very secretive. They don't tell us much about anything. They really only publicize when they're going to have a launch. And even then, we don't get to see it sometimes. Now, to go along with their secrecy, they launch from the Pacific Spaceport Complex in Kodiak, Alaska. Now, the thing about Kodiak, Alaska is it's a very remote location, and very few people are able to go up there and watch these launches, if any. And one of the only reasons we know that Astra exists as a company is because they won funding and moved on to the final round in a DARPA launch challenge. Now, this challenge was to have the ability to get a payload from a government agent, any government agency of a certain size, a small satellite, because these rockets are pretty small, and relative to, say, Falcon 9, and then launch it up into orbit within, say, 2 or 3 weeks. Now, Astra ultimately failed the challenge due to weather and ground system bugs. However, they are still attempting to fulfill the requirements of the challenge in order to prove that they have the ability. They are currently on their third version of their rocket. So far, it has had 2 launches. Neither of them have been successful, but each launch has gotten them closer and closer to their final goal. So I believe the first launch was terminated about 30 seconds into flight, whereas the second one made it past the Kármán line and into space, but was just unable to reach orbit. So they are making progress pretty rapidly. So I think that by the end of the year, they will most likely be in orbit. And like I said, they are very secretive. So basically all the information on the screen is all the information we have, unless you decide to request a launch from them, and they'll give you more information. Now, the next company is Firefly Aerospace. They are based in Texas. They have a multitude of products, but their current main focus is small launches. Their Firefly Alpha, which is pictured here below, is capable of launching anywhere from 500 to 1,000 kilograms into orbit, into low Earth orbit. They are currently conducting final testings before their first orbital launch attempt later this month. Last year, they static fire tested their 3D printed rocket engines for the first time, as you can see there on the left. Now, one thing about Firefly Aerospace is they are thinking way ahead into the future. So right now, they only have prototypes for Firefly Alpha, their small satellite launch vehicle, which is located in the top right-hand corner of this slide. Now, below that is what they refer to as Firefly Beta, and they propose Beta to launch medium-sized payloads into orbit, anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 kilograms. And from their current idea, and their current renderings put out, it'll basically be 3 Firefly Alpha rockets strapped together with a larger fairing on top. And the fairing is what you put the payload inside. And then if you look below Firefly Beta, there is a space plane, which they call Firefly Gamma. Now, the idea behind Firefly Gamma is to give companies and customers the ability to launch payloads into the outer solar system. So say you want to send something into orbit around Saturn. Firefly Gamma is what you would use to get it there. I believe the idea is to put Firefly Gamma inside of Firefly Beta in order to launch it. So that would be it's a very in-house system for Firefly. Now, so if you look in the bottom left, that is Firefly's proposed lunar lander. Now, the way the current space community is, everyone is currently focused on the moon, from NASA to SpaceX to Firefly. This is just their way of going to the moon. Now, this last image is what I think is probably the coolest image. Now, it is what they call their Space Utility Vehicle, or SUV. Now, the idea behind this is it allows people or customers rather, to send to orbit satellites that are not built by the customer. So if you're a customer and you say want to collect imaging data of South America, but you don't have the experience to build an entire satellite, you will pay Firefly and tell them what you need and tell them what you want, and maybe even send them some equipment, like cameras and whatnot, and they will attach it to their SUV, and the SUV will be your satellite in orbit. And it also has the ability to launch CubeSats, or super small, about this big satellites that can do a wide variety of things. And so that's what those 4 yellowish boxes are around the main cylinder. And it depicts it launching 2 CubeSats in various directions. One second. So can you hear me okay? Because someone said I was glitching.
I can hear you, but you are a little leggy.
All right. Well, I hope it doesn't get too bad. All right, so next up is RocketLab. RocketLab is my personal favorite aerospace company, just because of all the crazy things they do. Now, RocketLab was originally founded in New Zealand. However, it has since moved to the US for production, and it also now has a launch site here. So I decided to include it in this presentation. Now, RocketLab has 2 launch sites and 3 launch pads. One of the launch sites is located in southern New Zealand, and the other is located on the Virginia coast on Wallops Island. There are 2 launch pads at the New Zealand facility and 1 in Wallops. It also has a production facility in Southern California. Now, one of the funny things about RocketLab is that when they were founded in New Zealand, New Zealand didn't have a space agency. So when the founder, Peter Beck, went to the New Zealand government and was like, what do you want us to do? What rules do we have to follow? The government was like, we don't know. Can you give us a few months? And so they created the New Zealand Space Agency just so that they could tell RocketLab what to do and to set up those regulations. Now, as of today, RocketLab has conducted 18 launches, with 17 of those being successful. RocketLab's rocket is named Electron. It is only about 1.2 meters in diameter, so it's very small for an orbital rocket. And its main focus is small microsatellites, nominally about 150 kilograms. And so as you can see in this picture in the bottom left, you can see it right here. It's the second rocket from the left. It is much, much smaller than the Falcon 9 rockets that SpaceX uses, located on the right-hand side of this graphic. The rocket is made completely out of carbon fiber. It is the only rocket to be made out of this material, and it also has 3D printed engines. Let's see. Now, one of the cool things that RocketLab has is Photon. Now, the thing about Photon is it doesn't really do much on its own. The main purpose of Photon is to just move around the Earth. And the idea behind it is, just like with Firefly's SUV, is that customers can use it as a building block, right, as the foundation for their own satellite. The difference between Photon and the SUV is that Photon is actually already in service. There are, I believe, 2 or 3 of them already in orbit around the Earth, taking optical observations. Now, the last image that shows a satellite in front of the moon is of Capstone. Capstone is how Electron plans to go, or how RocketLab plans to go to the moon. They were awarded a contract to launch a microsatellite to the moon by NASA in support of the Artemis programs. Now, RocketLab sees this as a great way to just continue helping the industry, and it also sees it as a stepping stone for future interplanetary missions. The CEO of RocketLab, Peter Beck, has addressed his desire to send a RocketLab satellite to Venus to look for signs of life. So they'll probably be going to Venus sometime soon, within the next couple years. Now, one thing with RocketLab with Electron being so small is that it's not really practical for them to recover it like, say, SpaceX, where it comes and it lands on land. So for the longest time, RocketLab said, we are never going to become a reusable rocket company. And then they had to eat their hats because they were going reusable. They decided that they were going to catch their rocket with a helicopter. So here's a video of that. So obviously that was just a test. However, it proves that they can use a helicopter to catch the first stage of their rocket via parachute. Now, they are currently still collecting data from non-recovery launches in order to determine how best to actually catch a rocket that is coming back from space. And they expect that they will recover their first rocket by the end of this year or early next year. So that's definitely something to be looking out, because this is really cool. And this sort of thing has not happened since probably the 70s or 80s, when we were catching film from satellites with airplanes. All right, 1 second. All right, so I will put the link to this video in the chat at the end of the presentation if anyone would like to have it.
When is this over?
It should be about another 10-15 minutes, I believe. And I understand that we did get started late, so I will try to go a little faster here. Oh. Okay. So another cool thing that RocketLab does is it gives all their missions cool names, and when they design their mission patches, they're also kind of wacky. So, for instance, the 11th launch was a mission for the National Reconnaissance Office, and its mission patch depicts a kiwi, which is a bird native to New Zealand, and a bald eagle, the national bird of the U.S. So it's cooperation between the U.S. and New Zealand. And then another one is just, and then the 7th launch is a diamond logo name, and the name of the launch was Make It Rain. So it's just all kinds of wacky stuff for their missions, and it's really fun to watch and learn more about them. So this next company we're gonna learn about is Axiom Space. Now, Axiom Space has been in the aerospace game for a super long time, and they have been helping supply the International Space Station with parts, with bits and pieces of equipment and supplies throughout its entire history since the 90s and throughout and ever since. Now, one crazy thing about Axiom is that they have chartered one of the first private missions to the International Space Station, which will launch no earlier than October of this year. And this mission is called AX-1. They have contracted a SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule to take Tom Cruise and I believe it's Doug Lyman up to the space station along with one other person. And while up there, these two will film the first ever movie in space. So that should be really cool. Now, one of the crazy things about Axiom is that they plan on having a completed and functioning and open commercial space station by the year 2024. And so it is very likely that Axiom Space Station will not only be the first commercial space station, but the space station that ends up succeeding the International Space Station as the most important human presence in space eventually. All right, so the last company we're going to talk about is Relativity. There's not much information on them as they are still pretty new and they're pretty much in the prototyping phase for all their technology. Their idea is to 3D print their entire rocket. So this will be the first of its kind, and if it works, it'll vastly reduce the amount of parts needed by about 100 times, and it'll also make production about 10 times faster. And if their rocket, which they're calling Terran, is in fact able to lift the desired 1,250 kilograms to space, then it will also have a pretty decent sized payload. And with them 3D printing their rockets, they want to completely cut out the human factor and have a completely autonomous rocket factory, which will be a one-of-a-kind feature on Earth when it's completed. All right, so there are my sources. Thanks everyone for watching. I apologize for this going so late. Are there any questions?
I dropped something in the chat because I was hoping to get access to this presentation for further review on my own. I also wanted to send it to my twin brother, who was originally an aerospace engineer major at Purdue. So,
yes, I can definitely. Why don't you put your email into the chat, and I can, or if you don't want, or you can send it to me privately, and I will email you the presentation.
sure, yeah, I'll send it as a direct message via Zoom in this conversation.
All right. And one other thing I should mention is that there are a lot of other aerospace companies in the U.S. and around the globe. However, because there are so many, I decided to only focus in the U.S. and only on the companies that were making real progress and could be launching within the next year or two. Now, there could be another company that comes out of nowhere and is like, here we go. But I just chose to talk about some of the main ones. So are there any other questions?
Yeah, I'll ask another one. Are you guys part of an astronomy club?
Yes, we are part of the Central Washington University Astronomy Club, and the star parties are just one of the many things we do. We do them on the second and fourth Tuesdays of every month. And when we're not on over Zoom and when we are in person, we will also do stargazing afterwards, and go look at the planets or different stars or nebulas or whatever's out. And we use a variety of equipment from 10 to 24-inch telescopes.
Okay, well, I gave you my email. If you can send me if there's any details on how to join other than coming, I would love to.
Yeah, we can add you to our email list. And Ryan just put the club's website in the chat.
On an addendum to the star party dates, we only have star parties when we are in session academically. We don't hold star parties over breaks. We hold some over the summer, but those are generally for orientation groups. For the duration of the quarter, we'll be meeting on Zoom. So if you're out of the state or somewhere where you can't get here, that's perfect. We aren't meeting in person anyway. If you want more information, like Dominic said, send us an email and we will get you added to the list. You'll give me just a second. I can put it in the chat.
So there is the link. So I just put the link to that video I showed in the chat. Now, if you go to RocketLab's YouTube channel, or actually it'd probably be easier to just search RocketLab Recovery. They have some, they have some really cool videos on both their tests and an animation showing what they plan to do. And it's just a really cool video that would be cool to look at. So is there any other questions? All right, since there doesn't appear to be any other, since there does not appear to be any other questions, yes.
That might have been feedback from my phone.
Oh, okay. Since there does not appear to be any other questions, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Christine, you can take over again.
Thank you all for coming. I am so sorry it was late. I got out of the hospital at about 3:30 today and got home a little bit after 5, so I'm a little frazzled. And forgot that Deanna's not running these anymore. So it's not going to happen again. Thank you all for being so very patient, and thank you all for being here. It's great to come and see our presenters getting supported. I have no other announcements, so.
All right. Yeah. So I'm going to send you that email right now.
Okay, I'll go check for it. What's the email address it's coming from so it doesn't go to my spam?
It's just Dominic. And so there's going to be a couple slides that I did not show in the presentation itself. Those just provide some more information that are a slide.
Sorry, you were cutting out when you said it. Can you just send it to me in a message?
Yeah.
Just so everyone knows, you are in fact free to leave if you don't have any questions.
Awesome. Great job, Dominic. I will see you guys probably tomorrow.
Thank you.